In video number 1, I introduced Ramana Maharshi and then I spoke about the 4 paths to realization. Sri Ramana Maharshi lived 71 years and he left the body at the age of 71 in 1950. He lived in a place called Tiruchuli, about 50 kilometers away from Madurai. After his father's demise, he moved to Madurai and lived in his uncle's place. At the age of 16, he suddenly was gripped with fear of death when he was all alone upstairs in his uncle's house. Then he did not feel like telling this to anybody or sharing this with anybody. He just lay down and he closed his mouth and he lay down like a corpse. Then he said to himself, right, this body is dead now. This will be burnt. Is it all over? Am I this body? When he inquired, another I from inside started pulsating. He felt something else was there inside. That moment he realized that I am not this body mind, I am the substratum, Atma or Brahman. But the fun is, even after attaining, even after realizing his true nature, for many years he did not know even the word Brahman. He thought some disease had come upon him. Of course, later he ran away from home to Tiruvannamalai, and the rest of his life, till he shed his body, he lived in Tiruvannamalai. And a lot of people thronged to him, came to him, asked questions. He patiently answered more than 33,000 questions on record. I don't know how many more. He lived a simple life. He wore only a loin cloth, and he lived on the mountains for some time, and later he came down and people surrounded him, and the ashram grew up and it became a phenomenon. This is the story in simple of Sri Ramana Maharshi. And I said he taught the method of self-enquiry, Atma Vichara. Who am I? This is popularly associated with Sri Ramana Maharshi. Who am I? The enquiry, who am I? I was mentioning about the 4 major paths to self-realization. The one is selfless action. It is called the path of karma. The second one is the path of bhakti, devotion to your Ishta Devata, your personal God. It involves worship, ceremonial worship, and chanting of mantra, etc. And the third path is Patanjali Yoga, the control of the mind through pranayama, which is breath control, and meditation upon a single thought or a single God or whatever. The last one is the path of knowledge, which Sri Ramana Maharshi taught, the path of enquiry, self-enquiry, who am I? In all the 4 paths, what is to be noted is that the mechanism is like this. When we pursue any of these paths, the result is that our ego, our sense of I, our bodily sense of I gets attenuated. It becomes thinner and finally merges in the one consciousness, which is nothing but Brahman, Atma. When you do service selflessly, when you love others, you give more importance to them than to your own ego. And hence in the process, your ego gets attenuated. It becomes thin. And even in the process of worship of God, you say, God, you are greater, much greater than I am. You are everything. I am so small. I surrender myself to you. Even in that process, your ego becomes thinner and thinner. And in the process of yogic meditation, you do breath control and you do concentration. There also the mind subsides and merges into the self. The result is what is called samadhi, a state of bodiless awareness in which but you are aware, and that awareness is Brahman. The last path, enquiry, also leads to the same thing. Self-enquiry, Sri Ramana Maharshi used to say, is the most direct path without any intermediate steps. It is the shortest cut, so to say. So, what he suggested is that whenever a thought arises, whenever ego arises, here you should note, in the spiritual parlance, when they utter the word ego, they do not mean the sense in which we use the word normally, he is an egoistic person. Not in that sense. They use it as body awareness. I am the body thought. That is what is called ego. So whenever a thought arises, he says, instead of completing the thought, inquire to whom does this thought occur? Where from does this thought arise? He says, man entertains thoughts all the time. Of all the thoughts, the most important, the root thought is the I thought, which is born of the self only. The birthplace of this I thought, this ego, is nothing but Atma itself. So whenever a thought arises, if we turn the thought back to its source by inquiring, who am I? To whom does this thought occur? Which is it that is appearing as this I thought? I am repeating this inquiry. Which is it that is appearing as this I thought? If we go on inquiring like this, he says the mind will subside in the Atman. In the place in which the mind subsides, another I, what is called sphuranam, will arise. A sort of pulsation will arise, and don't mistake it for bodily sensation, he says. He says if you stick to that sphuranam, if you fix your attention, he says it will lead to realization.